Hi everybody, good morning and welcome to this webinar from Clover HR on the job support scheme and the government announcement over the weekend on Saturday. I think I was obviously fated to be in a bad situation because on Saturday not only did the Irish rugby team lose a game they really should have won, but also we had the announcement from Boris on Saturday with regard to the extension of the furlough arrangements, which meant that the carefully crafted slides we had prepared on Friday needed a degree of adjustment even further. But that's the world that we're in. So I'll take you through where I think we're at and take you through the situation as we think we understand it. So initially, the presentation today was going to focus purely on the JSS, the Job Support Scheme, but we'll update based on what we understand today, as of today, what we believe the latest status is. The session, therefore, will really focus on the Halloween update on Saturday evening and where we are until the 2nd of December. We'll then focus on the job support scheme, the open and the close arrangement, who's eligible, how payments are made, etc. And then the opportunity to ask any questions by way of email will be open to you as well. I see one or two people are sending some questions on the chat, which I'd be happy to take as well during the course of the session if we can. So we should be together for around half an hour. And hopefully you'll get something from that. We're also going to give you, towards the end, we're going to give you some what I think are very helpful links. And if anybody is interested in some template letter for the job support scheme, which, as we said, is not operable now until the 2nd of December, we can give you access to that as well. So let's just recap. Saturday night, Boris announced the extension of the job retention scheme, the JRS, or the furlough arrangements as we understand it. And really, if you think about it, he's putting the clock back to earlier this year when the furlough arrangements were first put in place. But what he announced on Saturday was the return to where we were on the 1st of August. The job retention scheme made allowance to pay employees up to 80% of their wage, subject to the employer paying employers' national insurance and the pension contributions. So that is where we are today, and that is where we will be as of up to the 2nd of December. So we're now in the situation where the furlough scheme, as of August, is now in place. The job support scheme has been delayed until the 2nd of December. The good news is, however, that all employees on the payroll up until the end of October are now eligible for the furlough scheme. So if you have hired anybody since in October, or indeed last week, and provided they're on the payroll, they can now be eligible for the furlough scheme. And the really good news, I think this is a reflection of how dire things are and how serious the government is taking this situation, is employees will be able to receive 80% of their monthly wage up to the cap, you will all remember, of £2,500, whilst employers remain responsible for employers' national insurance and pension contributions. So the slide is basically saying we go back to August, we go back to 80% contribution, we go back to you still being responsible for employers' national insurance and pension, but with the caveat that we can add anybody to the furlough arrangement at least up until the 2nd of December, provided they've been on the payroll as of Saturday night. So remember that, and that's what, in essence, Boris announced on Saturday. Now, we are getting some further detail on that, and as obvious, there'll be nuances on that, but we will update you all through the blogs and through what we put on our features, so that you can keep up to speed on that. But that slide basically is what Boris announced on Saturday, and that's now what is in place until the 2nd of December. So as I've said, the furlough scheme and the flexible furlough scheme to help business up to 80%, up to that cap is in place. Depending upon who you talk to, and Leanne Porter and the team dug this statistic out for me, we reckon the bill for the furlough arrangement is going to cost around 210 billion. That's based on the research that we've been able to extract, and it's covered somewhere in excess of 9.4 million people. Now, if you think that the general UK workforce is 28 million people, you can see that roughly 30% of the UK working population has been covered by this furlough arrangement. It has been, whatever the rights or wrongs as to where we are, it has been an undoubtable success. And I think that lies behind the Chancellor and the government statement to extend the furlough arrangement until the 2nd of December. And that 210 billion, I want you to hang on to that number for a second, because when we got the announcement the end of September about the job support scheme, which was originally expected to replace the furlough scheme in November, we reckon that's going to cost around 10 billion. So you can see the scale of support is significantly less with the job support scheme, obviously delayed now to the 2nd of December, but we reckon that's the scale of the difference. If we have to compare one with the other, obviously that 10 billion number, to some extent, that's a guesstimate, but we think that's the best scenario as to what the scale of the difference is. Bear in mind the job support scheme, people, is not going to be available until the 2nd of December. So everything from now on, I'm going to share with you, is operable as we understand it today from the 2nd of December. Because of feedback received when the job support scheme was initially opened or introduced by the Chancellor, there are two job support arrangements. There's the open and the closed, and we'll discuss the difference between the two because it applies in different ways. So the open arrangement are for those businesses that are operating but are facing decreased demand. Access for wage support can be made available through the open arrangement. The closed JSS, and this is what the Chancellor announced in the wake of criticism, particularly from the retail and the hospitality industry, are for those businesses that are legally required to close as a direct result of Corona. And the closed arrangement is there to help them through this period of time. Again, remember, this doesn't happen until post the 2nd of December. But you can see the open and the closed and what they're setting out to achieve. As of today, as I said, the job support scheme is scheduled to open on the 2nd. And it was envisaged to run for 6 months until April 2021. The job support scheme cannot be used for anyone working their notice, i.e. it's designed to keep people in the job. The jobs retention bonus payable in February is still able to be claimed, and we have some further details on that in the final slide. And again, there's an ongoing review from the government in terms of what's going to happen post the beginning of next year. But we have to get to the beginning of next year first. So the job support scheme, in essence, 2nd of December onwards, it's not to be designed for people working redundancy. That was one of the flaws in the furlough arrangement, but was used by various employers at various levels. The open arrangement, again, employees will need to work a minimum of 20% of the usual hours. So i.e. 1 day a week in a 5-day week. Employers are responsible for paying for that time worked on the normal rates. So if somebody works a Monday, 1 day and 5, you pay them the standard wage for that 1 day. And any hours where they do not work will be split between the employer and the government in the following ways that we'll demonstrate. So again, it's for a minimum of 20% of the usual hours. They have to work that in order to be able to claim the job support scheme. The difference is when he got the criticism, you can see the change that Rishi introduced. The employer contribution was changed for wage costs was reduced from 33 to 5%, with the government making up 62% approximately, and the minimum number of hours the employee would have to work is reduced from 20% rather than 33%. So you can see the criticism and the feedback resulted in substantial improvements to the employer side in terms of the extra support. Equally, the downside is we as taxpayers have extra wage costs to pick up as a result of the additional support. But you can see the criticism and the impact that it had. The eligibility, again, you need to be a UK employer with a UK bank account on the PAYE scheme. You do not, interestingly, not have to have been previously using the job retention scheme, i.e. imagine that we were on the 3rd of December. If you hadn't used the furlough arrangement, you could still access this. You don't have to have used the furlough arrangement before. There must be an agreement in writing with the employee to work the reduced hours. If you do not have an example of the letter that we send employees in that scenario, let me know. My email address is at the end of these slides. Just drop me a line and we can send you that. For larger businesses, there are some substantial probity tests that the government have introduced to ensure that they're actually not able to afford to do this. So people will have to show numbers, balance sheets, history of financial records, etc. Publicly funded organisations are not expected to use the scheme. I think that's fairly self-evident. So good news is that you do not have to use the job retention scheme. You need to have been a UK employer with a UK bank account, and there needs to be a letter in writing with employees. The employee eligibility, this is assuming this was introduced on the 1st of November, and there'll be guidance on this, but they needed to have been on the payroll on the 23rd of September. They needed to have worked 20% of the usual hours. Staff on any contract are eligible, including those on variable or 0 hours and agency workers. So if you're in retail, if you're in hospitality, if you're in industries typically associated with minimum wage, you can still access support through the scheme. The final bullet point there is that people can literally come on and off the scheme. However, each short-time working arrangement must cover a minimum period of 7 days, and that's a minimum period of 7 consecutive calendar days. 7 consecutive calendar days. So that includes weekends, and that must be a minimum. I think we've got some examples. There's some rules there. The employer will pay 5% of the salary up to a maximum of £125 per month. You can obviously pay more if you wish. The government will pay the remainder up to a maximum of roughly £1,500 per month. And we reckon that will ensure that employees will receive at least 73% of the normal wage, where individuals earn less than £3,000 or so. As I mentioned, employers will still be responsible for employers' national insurance and pension contribution costs. But obviously you pay the contractual pay for any hours worked, i.e. that Monday in the example that I gave, that's a standard Monday on normal working hours. And then the government and the employer contributions make up the other elements of the 73%. So that slide is very useful guys, if you want to just get a summary snapshot of the numbers. We've got a couple of examples, I think, here. Yeah, Andrew earning £1,400 a week. You can see the benefits and how the 73% is made up. So the pay covering for 20%, the 5% company contribution, i.e. that you would pay as an employer, the government grant for the elements that are not worked, and the employer's national insurance, £56 mentioned again. So there's an example that we hope that you can use. The other example is Alina earning roughly £1,100. You can see the numbers are calculated on the same basis. So there's a couple of examples. You can apply that to your own scenario. And again, remember, this is not operable until post the 2nd of December. Making a claim, well, if you've been using the job retention scheme, you would do so in the normal way. The job support scheme will be open through an online arrangement from the 8th of December. Obviously, that's subject to change based on an ever-changing scenario. Grants are payable in arrears, and it will be via the immediate payroll system, and the payments are made monthly. That's hugely important. Remember, guys, as we're coming up to the end of Christmas, and if the scheme is operable on the 2nd of December, remember you'll have short payroll runs. Importantly, because of flaws in the furlough arrangements, HMRC are making more and more checks to ensure that what we put in is actually based on correct information. So there's a lot more checks taking place. It's important that employers agree short-term working arrangements in writing with employees. And we've got a link at the end of the presentation here where you can possibly use and tailor the approach that we've taken. There's some headlines to ask Leanne to dig out. You can see the scale of the potential damage from fraudulent claims. Anything from 3 to 4 billion is estimated to have not gone into the right hands. And there'll be more and more checks done about that, but it is shocking to see that level of abuse. The closed job support scheme, again, not operable until the 3rd of December. This is where employers, businesses, particularly those in hospitality, have been required to close premises as a direct result of Corona. The support in place for wages. Each employee will receive 2/3 of normal pay, paid by their employer and fully funded by the government to a maximum of £2,083 approximately. So you can see that's slightly more generous than the open arrangement. And again, the employer, subject to them being able to do that, can pay more if they so wish. Again, there'll be schemes in place to check for fraudulent claims. A hotline has been opened, and I think more and more people will be making access to that if they see fraud taking place. Things to remember. I'm conscious that there's a lot of information on that. It's absolutely essential that written consent is in place from all employees. This applies to the job retention scheme, the furlough arrangement, as well as the job support scheme. Annual leave will continue to accrue, and that is at the normal rate. So albeit I have been on furlough, albeit I may be placed in the job support scheme, my annual leave will continue. And that's a big issue for employers, because if many employees have been accruing leave during furlough time, there's a big backlog of holidays that need to be taken. Now, some of the things that we've done is that we've advised some of our employers to actually force or dictate the period of time in which holidays will need to be taken to offset some of that potential damage. So you may want to consider setting out time, akin to a manufacturing shutdown at the uh, beginning of August. Back in the day when I worked in manufacturing, there used to be the last week of August, last week in July, first 2 weeks in August that used to be dictated to be taken off. If you've got people building up holiday arrangements, you can dictate up to the 20-day threshold. You can dictate when they should be taking those holidays. An employee on annual leave obviously gets paid the full rate for any holidays. We cannot use the job support scheme for any employee who's working redundancy notice. The job retention arrangement was used in that way by some. The job retention bonus is still going to be available next year, provided the criteria are met. And we've got a final slide on that. So there's some things that are absolutely essential to remember. The other things I think we've dug out over the weekend. Obviously, remember with the furlough arrangement, this is the thing that's in place until the 2nd of December. We can now include any new employees previously not covered by the furlough arrangement up until the end of October. So anybody new that we've taken on in October can now be covered by that on any arrangement. Have in writing, please, that these agreements are in place. It should be noted that Parliament is meeting and debating these issues up until Wednesday, so some of this may change, but we'll obviously update you all on that. But these are the essential nuggets that we have at the moment. So in my view, the job support scheme, not operable for at least another month, is not as generous as the furlough, but it's a significant improvement on what was originally set out. You remember the slide that we shared with you about what it was envisaged to be like first, and then the extensions in improvements. The job support scheme, when it happens post the 2nd of December, is designed to help an employer retain skills and avoid the need to pay redundancy. And might offset some potential changes. There are two schemes, open and close. We set out the differences for those. Go back to the examples, please, regarding Andrew and Alina, that we think will give you some ideas as to how it's worked out. And there'll be a review of where we are in January, if not before. So this is very much a moving feast. Things are changing literally quite rapidly. We will keep you, however, posted. Remember, there's no question that's a stupid question. Do reach out to us. We've sent you some links in that slide that are very, very useful. The first one is the one that Boris announced on Saturday. The second one is the initial announcement regarding the job support scheme. The third one are some fact sheets which we found useful with regards to some examples and detail on the job support scheme. There's my email address. If anybody wants to email me seeking a template for the job support scheme, please feel free. We'll send that back to you. I think any questions or hopefully some answers as well, just email me and we can cover those off. And that's my phone numbers, etc., etc. So I'm some details of where we are and some pictures of the team, which who won't thank me for putting their pictures up or whatever. So that's where we are. That's the final slide that I said is the appendix on the job retention scheme bonus criteria. Yeah, you can read that at your leisure. But feel free, guys, if anybody has any questions, reach out and give me a shout. It's just coming up to 12:30. I hope you found that useful. I'm going to close off the session now, and thank you all. Thank you all for your support, and thank you for any questions. I've got a couple of things to answer in the chat, which I'll do shortly, but thank you all. So I'm going to close the session now, if I've got the technology to do that. Leanne, Portia, thank you very much for the slides. Chloe, thank you very much for putting some of the details together. And thank you all. All the best. Have a great week, and talk to you soon.